This is our New York building. We've got roughly 3,000 people here in New York.
Just a small outpost for you.
It's a smaller of our sites. And in this site, we do a lot of advertising, we do a lot of infrastructure, we build a lot of computer equipment. So we wanted to showcase the sort of history of computing for people in New York. So
and these look like dinosaurs
Yes,
to
and
me.
they are, and I've used most of them. This was something called a Symbolics machine, and it was a weird machine. It was used, among other things, to work on NASA equipment and other things. It's, you program it in a language called Lisp, which only has L-I-S-P, and it only has 2 commands. People who were Lispers were among the smartest. We actually have a whole company now, the ITA, that uses the software that Symbolics invented 30 years ago.
So this is what, a 30-year-old computer?
Yeah, this is a 30-year-old computer. And what is shocking to people is how slow these things are. This is something called the SparkStation 1. I was one of the executives that helped design this
at Sun,
when I was at Sun. And this was called the Pizza Box. It's the first sort of single board design. And again, it had a screen. It had one of the first user interfaces. Again, we take these things for granted now. This is the machine when Steve Jobs left Apple for the first time. He went to a company that was called Next, as in the next thing. And the Next computer built the operating system that is now used by Apple worldwide. So this computer lives in your phone if you're an iPhone user.
But at the time this was created, did anybody think that iPhones were definitely going to be around this soon?
No, in fact, Apple, under the other leadership, had talked about something called a personal digital assistant, and everyone poo-pooed it. This product was built actually for computer use in enterprises, in companies. And I remember Steve getting up and talking about how wonderful computers were in corporations, because that's who his customers were. Of course, today Apple is a great consumer company, not an enterprise company.
What really is interesting to me, looking at all these computers, is you're not just a guy who is the figurehead of a business. You have a PhD in computer engineering.
Computer science, yeah.
So you sort of lived all this
I did. I have,
way.
in fact, programmed all these computers. And what's shocking about them is when you go back, you should realize how incredibly slow they were, right? They literally, we would wait and wait and wait and wait. And the story of computer power is something called Moore's Law, where computers roughly double in performance every year for 2 years. You do that for 30 years, it's straight up. Okay, that's what's really going on here.
Well, that's good, because I have to admit, I get impatient now if things just happen in about 3 seconds.
If you go back to
the Commodore, I remember the Commodore.
This was actually the first personal computer in some people's mind. It was largely useless, right? And the company failed. But it showed the way to building these very, very integrated computers. It's so slow, no one could actually use it.
So when people were thinking about things, was the idea just, we'll build one now, the next version will get better, we'll figure it out, or did they think they had it?
At the time, people didn't understand computer scaling. So at the time, IBM mainframes controlled the world, and this was a way of giving power to the individual. That narrative is the narrative that's been true of computers forever. There's central computing, which sort of power to the man, if you will,
right.
And then power to the person, power to the individual was the rallying cry of the personal computer, and it broke the stranglehold of these sort of centralized architectures. Atari 800 is another example of a very early computer. This is the original IBM personal computer. You can see the screen. This is the screen. We're not just faking it. That's how bad it was.
And you can barely make
you
things out on it. Yeah.
And it used little floppy disks
that went in here
that were always breaking. And to give you an idea, your computer, the one that you have on your phone, is about 100,000 times more powerful and has about 1 million times more disk storage than this.
So we see here, looking at this array, that stuff keeps getting better and better. But are we going to reach a point where they just say, you know, this is as good as it gets?
It's going to slow down. The reason is we're running out of physics. There's so few atoms in the transistors now, we can't get rid of even more atoms. But the accomplishment the physicists have done are fantastic. Most people think that this Moore's Law transition will go on for another 5 to 10 years, but it will eventually slow.
The idea that technology doubles?
The doubling every couple of years. These are, in fact, Android, which is the most popular operating system. To give you an example, there are 750 million of these phones in use today, and there's about 1.5 million being turned on every day. Far more popular than the competitors. Interesting. So this is the original one, which was, shall we say, on the edge of working well.
And is it heavy?
It's pretty heavy. It was quickly replaced, but it showed the way.
From your point of view as somebody who lives, breathes, thinks this stuff all the time, is it easy to forecast the future?
Yeah.
It is. But on the other hand, you have said, hey, I missed social media. I should have thought of Facebook.
Well, I made mistakes, right? I absolutely made mistakes. But if you look at, you can predict in aggregate what the industry will do. It's pretty clear that these devices will be our future, that this and tablets, and that they're going to get much, much more powerful, and that this new generation of apps are going to do amazingly new things.